Happy Saturday. Welcome to the Scoop World Order. Your boy has got no voice right now, but we're going to try to gut through this thing. We're talking about some of the playoff expansions, some of the stuff we heard in the Woody Hayes. Take your questions as we head off into this amazing Saturday night. What a run it has been for Ohio State. And this new playoff format is incredible. And I think that they're going to make some really nice tweaks that'll make it even better than it has. But I think the playoffs is the greatest thing that's happened to college football. And I'm really excited to see them expand it and tweak it a little bit. So we're going to get into that. As always, we're going to take your questions. If you guys enjoy our content, please leave us a like, click subscribe. Also, click that little alert bell. Again, I appreciate you guys being on here each and every night. I hope you guys are having a great Saturday. This was we were going to go a little earlier, but had some errands to run, so we're going to kick it right now for an hour and grind through this show. Oh, excuse me. I got to get rid of Spiro's old show. Let me bring in Nevada. The old Nevada. There's Nevada. Nevada, the new playoff format is something that I think is going to be awesome. Talking about four guaranteed seeds for the Big Ten, four guaranteed seeds for the SEC, in a playoff form or a play-in format that I think is really intriguing. Talk to us a little bit about what that means for Ohio State and for the Big Ten and for the SEC, and why this is going to be awesome for college football.
Well, you're talking about a playoff expansion where they're talking about, understand the format right now. The format goes one more year under the current structure unless it's unanimously decided by all the stakeholders to change the any part of the playoff. So for one more year, conceivably, unless there's unanimity, it's going to be the same as it was this year. Now, starting in 2026, the new playoff structure is determined solely by the Big Ten and the SEC, solely. So the other conferences don't have a say in the playoff structure going forward. So in theory, the Big Ten and the SEC could say, hey, we're only going to play for the championship and you guys aren't even going to play. Obviously, they're not going to do that. Politically, that would be a mistake. There's all sorts of reasons why something like that would not happen. But in terms of the determinations, it's going to be made by the Big Ten and the SEC. And what they've come up with is an expansion to a 14-team playoff, which means you'll have two teams that'll get a bye in the first round. The winner of the SEC and the winner of the Big Ten will get a bye in the first round of the playoff, and then it'll go as a normal 16-team format after that, with the other 12 teams playing first-round games, and then you kind of move on to through the process as you go there down to an ultimate champion. Each of the conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC, will get 4 auto bids. And when you think about that from Ohio State's perspective, because I always think of it as an Ohio State fan, what does it mean to Ohio State? What it means is for Ohio State now, if you think back on how we won the path to the national championship in years gone by, years ago it was you had to be voted as the best team in the country. You had to be perfect and be voted as the best team in the country. Then it was be voted one of the top 2 teams in the country, then one of the top 4 teams in the country. And last year, obviously, come in as one of the top, 7 teams because you had auto bids to some of the conference champions. This now is you're going to have to be just one of the top 4 teams in the Big Ten. So as an Ohio State fan, I think that this just means more playoff opportunities, more chops at the pot, as it were. And, as we discussed, I think one of the most interesting things is how you determined the top 4 teams of the Big Ten, because it would seemingly just be easy. Because when I first heard this, I'm like, well, they'll just take the top 4 teams in the regular season, and those teams will be the auto qualifiers. And then if you're below that, you can, qualify as an at-large team. But that doesn't really work because the inequities in the scheduling. And we saw it this year, just to choose a team like Indiana that played really nobody. They played one game the whole year, Ohio State, and they lost that game. But because of playing nobody, they had a pretty gaudy record and were one of the top 4 teams in the Big Ten. So you can't just leave it to the schedule makers to decide that. So what they're going to go with is Big Ten championship weekend used to just be the Big Ten championship game. That'll stay in place. 1 versus 2 in the regular season will play each other. Both of those teams will be guaranteed bids into the playoff. Whoever wins that game will get the bye. The other team will be in the playoff. Then you'll play 3 will host number 6 in the Big Ten in a game, and 4 will host 5 in a game. And the winner of those 2 games get the auto bids and proceed. So now your Big Ten championship weekend has expanded from just being a championship game to being 3 games, all play-in games in the college football playoffs. So, if you're looking for end of the year meaningful games, I like having them be conference home games so that you get all the pageantry and excitement of a home game. Um, and that's what's going to be the format. And I think it's subject to potential changes as more people kind of weigh into this, as television weighs into this and stuff. But I think they pretty much are locked into doing this. So you would have 4 teams for the Big Ten, 4 teams for the SEC, and you obviously the other teams for the other conferences, and they would go normal seeding, no auto seeds, no overseeding teams like that, and you'd have a playoff. So I think it's exciting. It's definitely going to be different. Not quite an NFL model, but certainly getting closer to an NFL model. But for me personally, as an Ohio State fan, I think anything that gets Ohio State into the tournament, and if we're alive, I think we certainly have got chances. We evidence this year. A lot of times, we are the best team in the country. We just might slip up along the way, and under old formats, we wouldn't have won. But this year, we had a chance to do it. We had a chance to show everybody how good we were, and we won the prize. And the big thing is, I think, getting through this playoff now, you've only got 3 coaches in college football that have won championships. You've got Kirby and Dabo and Ryan Day. That's going to be a big advantage of this as well because playoff experience, playoff success is going to be a big deal. And we've got a 45-year-old head coach who's already won a national championship. Another advantage for Ohio State in this format, and that's just another reason why I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of stuff that they can fix from this first round. I thought the playoffs it was the greatest thing this happened in college football in I don't say in my lifetime. I don't be too crazy, but it was really cool seeing Tennessee play in the horseshoe in the cold. There's no getting around it. They can't not schedule them. Um, I loved seeing football in December, early December in Division One. I thought that was awesome. But there's some things that need fixed. Obviously, he should be rewarded for being the number 1 seed. That should be overpowered, like we talk about, to the point where people never question, oh, should we sit players out? Or should we not dress guys to so they don't risk injury? That number 1 seed should be overpowered to the point where that's never an issue. But my question to you, Nevada, is there ever going to be a point you think, and we've talked about like this league that could form of, let's face it, the SEC and the Big Ten are like King Kong and Godzilla, and all the other ones are just like pheasants or some small vermin. So, I mean, if they wanted to break away and hoard all of the money and figure out a scheduling system that was balanced, do you think that's something that could happen? Because I think that would be obviously awesome for us because we'd love to watch it, and it would, with a schedule rotation, I think it would ensure that teams don't get punished for playing Georgia, because everybody has to play Georgia, everybody has to play Bama, and everybody has to play, like, if they take over the scheduling and all of a sudden you've got these, everyone has to play hard teams. I think that'd be great for the game. I know right now, like, when there's not a format like that, it's basically schedule the worst people you can and then try to get through your league, and then hopefully you're good enough to make the playoffs, as opposed to Ohio State, when they made their schedule 10, 15 years ago. I mean, I don't know when they announced that they're going to play Texas and then Bama, Georgia. I mean, our out of conference is absolutely insane over the next 10 years. I mean, it's crazy. But that was scheduled at a different time. So I don't know if there's a remedy to that, because I can't fault. I mean, we beat on Gene Smith all the time just because I don't think he's very smart. But at the time, like, there was something to getting into a 4-team playoff and playing a hard schedule. And hey, we didn't dodge anybody. We played Bama, and we went to Bama, and we went to Georgia, and went to Texas and all that. So I don't know. What do you think the future holds for the Big Ten, SEC? And obviously, if you're the athletic director, you're not going to schedule any good teams ever again if the current format holds. But how do they fix that, Nevada?
Well, I mean, look, there's a lot to unpack there. The challenge. I mean, what you're seeing is a move towards two gigantic super conferences, and that's already happening. We've already seen it with the expansion of the Big Ten and with the expansion of the SEC. I think ultimately what you're going to have is the Big Ten's going to have 24 schools, and the SEC is going to have 24 schools. And by that point in time, you're going to have the top 48 schools in the country will all be either part of the Big Ten or the SEC, and you're going to have a hard time making an argument for anybody else to really be considered as a worthy champion of football. And so at that point, I think it just becomes it becomes organic that just becomes the football championship, because all the good schools, all the football schools will be part of the Big Ten or the SEC. So I think that's absolutely where we're moving. The problem with, you talk about, well, everybody plays Georgia. Well, when you've got that, everybody can't play Georgia because, there's 24 teams in your conference or whatever you want to call it. So what you've got to do is you've just got to get rid of, if every game is of one of the 48 worthy schools, at least that raises the bar for everybody in terms of playing. Because right now, like Indiana, for example, Indiana this year plays, and their three non-conference games are Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, and Indiana State. Those are their three non-conference games. And you've got to get you say, how do we fix this? How do we get it? The first thing you got to do is those games have got to go away, and those games have got to be replaced with real games, even if it's against Rutgers, or even if it's against Virginia, or it's just got to be a real school. It's got to be real games against real opponents, and then you can start. That'll be the first step towards at least somewhat balancing the schedules. You can have a certain number of home games, a certain number of away games, and that everybody plays, and that helps balance things as well. And getting rid of these, Kennesaw State types of non-conference matchups will kind of help balance out the schedule strength at least. And I think they'll be able to start, relying more upon less on pollsters and more upon analytics, and more objective measures, less subjective measures to measure these teams. And I think that's ultimately where we're headed. But it's a process, because it's a process to absorb these teams into conferences, because there's more implications than just football. There's a research consortium. There's an academic element to this. There's a lot of things that go into this, with carving up these large television deals, and these large TV deals for the premier products are only going to get bigger, because now, before, when we talk about streaming services, people would kind of glaze over and be like, Nevada, what are you talking about with streaming services? So what we're talking about now, if you're watching the game, and before you could watch the game, and if you had ABC, CBS, NBC, and ESPN, you got the games. And now it's expanded beyond that. And now, if an Ohio State game is on Paramount Plus only, and another game is on Netflix only, and another game is on Apple TV only, then you're going to have to subscribe to those streaming services if you want to watch those games. And what Netflix is, experienced great subscriber growth because they got a couple of NFL games. And if you wanted to watch those NFL games, you had to watch it on Netflix. And people then bought Netflix because it's basically pay-per-view for these games, and for people will pay-per-view for college football, especially for big-time college football, especially for big-time college football with brands like Ohio State, like Georgia, like Alabama, like USC, things like that. They'll pay for that. So you're going to see more. What that means is there's going to be more competition for that, more dollars flowing into it, and Ohio State's going to be in the catbird seat, because Ohio State is a very recognizable brand, a very successful brand, and they drive a lot of money, and a lot of people want that. They want the eyeballs, they want the subscriptions, they want those things going on. And so, as an Ohio State fan, I think it's just there's going to be challenges as this thing kind of evolves. It's going to be kind of a slow process. Because we're talking about decades till we actually get to the 24, but it's coming. And so you just got to know where the ending point is, so you can kind of understand what these little stations are along the way. They taking over the college football playoff here in 2026. That's the next step in the evolution of these super conferences. And so that's that's going to happen over the next 18, 24 months.
Yeah, I think you're dead right. I think that the best thing that'll happen from a super conference forming with 40 teams or whatever it is, 48 teams, whatever the number is that you'll finally be able to have a commissioner and you'll finally have a governing body and you'll finally be able to operate like a pro sport because that's what we are. The problem is that everything is so outdated compared to like college football is just it's closer to the NFL, the NHL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, and all of the other collegiate sports aren't really even close to that. And basketball is probably the next tier down, but there's just different problems in football and basketball, men's basketball, than in every other sport. So it needs a commissioner, it needs a governing body, it needs things to be standardized. I've voiced my frustrations in the past about our drug testing and at Ohio State versus the drug testing that goes on at the SEC in Florida and LSU, where they fail tests and nothing really happens. Again, I think there should be a standardized process. Obviously, they don't test for weed anymore at all. So, but I like there to be a ruling body, a governing body. I think a disciplinary body, like a lot of leagues have, where they've got maybe former players that judge targeting fouls or whatever, assess things, suspensions, overturn suspensions. I just think that it would really streamline things and make things a lot more efficient and a lot easier. And I think that if you alternated between Greg Sankey or in Petiti, like if you had to go like an SEC guy for the first 2 years and then a Big Ten guy for the first 2 years, whatever, figure out who would be that commissioner, and let him run the whole league. Because I think that the top tier of college football has just way different problems from the middle and bottom tier. And then you figure out, is the transfer portal stay the same? Do these kids still just get to be open season? Because one thing that I hate, and I love the transfer portal. One thing that I hate is I hate the fact that you've got a lot of these smaller schools that get poached over and over again for their players. And again, that's just part of life. And honestly, I like that the kids that maybe outperform where they were recruited can move up in life and go to Ohio State or Alabama or wherever. But I hate that it really kills the lower tiers of college football. It makes it just like a revolving door constantly. But I don't know. I think that'd be the cool thing about having a super league is maybe only kids from that league can transfer inside of it. Or I don't know how it would work, but it would be interesting to see how that shakes out. 'Cause I just think that the efficiency would be so great to have the Big Ten and SEC working together, and there would always be like a rivalry there, just like the American League and National League in baseball back in the day. But I think if they combine their strength, it would make college football even better than it already is. So, Nevada, any thoughts on that? We can get into some super chats.
Well, yeah, no, it's. I mean, look, the Big Ten and the SEC, they're fierce competitors on the field, but they've got a lot, in common off of it. And the SEC is, headed by Greg Sankey, who I think Sankey is the smartest guy going in sport. And I love Tony Petitti a lot in the Big Ten, but Sankey's, he's a monster. I mean, he's a really smart guy, kind of ruthless, but that's kind of what you like in a guy. And he'd be a guy that if they ever went to a commissioner, well, I know people would scream. They'd be like, "Oh no, Nevada, how can you do?" I'd be like, I'd be all about him being the commissioner because I think he'd be a guy that would enforce the rules. If he was enforcing rules for everybody, if he wasn't no longer the president of the SEC and he was or the commissioner of the SEC and he was the commissioner of all football, I think it'd be an amazing. It'd be an amazing thing. And I think for Ohio State, as they figure out NIL, as they put guidelines on what you can give to the players, as the playoff expands, I just think all these things really inure to the benefit of a school like Ohio State because, I think the rich are going to get richer under this format. You're right. The smaller teams are going to get poached. They're basically becoming nothing but glorified minor league teams for the big ones. And for Ohio State, it's kind of get the best of both worlds because they've got a robust NIL program. They've got a great recruiting base in the state of Ohio. They've got a national brand that they can go out with and, that they've been able to sell in terms of development of players to, certain position groups better than anybody ever in the history of college football. and that's why they're going to continue to be good. And we've talked about this golden age of Ohio State football that's been going on now for, I don't know, 25 years. But there's no reason to think it's going to stop anytime soon. And it's going to be fun. And the first four, once they expanded the playoff and were the first playoff expansion of 4 teams, the first of 12 teams, and they go to 14, we might as well be the first champion of 14 as well. So future's bright for Ohio State football.
And I agree with you. Greg Sankey is the guy for the job, and I think that you're a guy you've been around the great commissioners, David Stern, Gary Bettman, and then you've seen the guys like Adam Silver, who's one of the worst commissioners. I mean, he's taken the NBA into the toilet. It's like you've seen what greatness looks like, and I think Sankey's the guy too. I think he, because the biggest thing with the SEC and the Big Ten is as a conference and the teams at all levels, the top tier, which is like the Ohio State and Georgia, the middle tier, the lower tier. Those two conferences are the ones that they have a lot of the same problems, a lot of the same issues. And I think if they put their heads together, they could solve a lot of it and fix a lot of it. So I'd be really excited for that to happen. Rave YouTube, thanks for the 5. Appreciate you, my dude. Massive. What's the latest word on Larry Johnson? Is he staying or leaving? I'll let you go first, Nevada.
I mean, we haven't heard that he's leaving at all. I mean, I think I personally think that's been kind of a non-story that's been put out there by something. I think that they're making a lot out of Ryan meeting with the defensive position coaches about Matt Patricia, or specifically about his meeting with Larry Johnson. But I just think that was a regular process for Ryan, that he met with all the defensive staff and he met with all of them, individually and then collectively, to talk to them about how Matt Patricia was going to integrate in there. And I mean, what's Larry going to do? Go play shuffleboard down in Del Boca Vista? He's paid a lot of money. He's got his guys. He's got some big monsters on the inside. He just had a heck of a recruiting class, bringing in numbers from out there, and he's operating at the top of his game right now. So I personally think that was a nothing burger story, but hey, could anything happen? Sure, but I have not heard anything that would indicate to me that there's any legs to anything about there being any immediate change. I mean, someday Larry Johnson is going to retire, so that is absolutely going to. He's 75 years old, 78, 80, whatever he said, but I don't think that's today.
I mean, for me, it's just like I've said it a million times. Dude makes $1 million a year to coach a position group, coach the D line. And again, look, he's not Urban Meyer. He's not Larry Johnson or Nick Saban. I mean, Urban's made, 50, 80 million, whatever he made as a coach. Like, so that's a whole different ball of wax than being a career position coach like Larry was. And the salary, I mean, he didn't make $1 million until his past, couple of years. So, now, can he live comfortably? Of course. I'm not trying to be stupid. Obviously, I'm sure he saved his money and done well and everything else, but $1 million is $1 million. And it's almost March. So, the coaching carousel has stopped spinning around. So I don't think he's going anywhere. I don't think it'd be fair to the players. I know that Tony Alford left in the middle of spring ball, whatever, but I think that that's a bad propaganda rumor put out by nefarious people via the Woody Hayes in the media, in the credentialed media. I do. Because I don't think Larry's been wanting to go anywhere. But he's had to fight this thing where he's been retiring every year, and he's had to fight it every year in recruiting, and he's had to fight it every year with his players. And I'm like, like when he retires here, I would guess if he's going to retire, he'd probably retire right after the bowl game. He's not going to wait, a month and then retire, and leave the team in a lurch and whatever. Like that just makes no sense. So, and again, if he wanted to retire on top, why don't you just right off into the sunset after winning the national title? Because he doesn't want to retire yet. Because he makes $1 million coaching 4 guys, And if Ryan Day wants to meet with him and talk through, hey, we might run odd front. I don't care. You pay me $1 million. We could run 0 defensive linemen and just run all DBs. I don't care. I'll be fine. I'll be straight. So I don't know. It seems like that's never had legs. It's always just been like this kind of trash narrative that's come out where it's like Larry's this, people like Larry's this terrible recruiter and he's lazy or whatever. Like, and I'm like, well, he just got Edric Houston to like last year. I mean, Edric Houston's the #1 defensive player in the country. So I don't know what he's doing, but I don't know. There's these dumb narratives that come out, man, and they're just so fun to pulverize because I love LJ and I hope he's here for a long time. And it is what it is. Rave YouTube, thank you for the 5. Has OSU ever finished outside of the top 10 in the Big Ten? Aren't we a massive lock for every playoff? We should be. I think outside, unless we have a catastrophic injury, which again, we survived our quarterback going down, but that was a rare instance where we had JT Barrett and we had Cardell ready to go. That doesn't normally happen. You guys saw, at the Cotton Bowl when Devin Brown got hurt, it looked like a disaster zone. So I don't think we've finished outside the top 4. I know we didn't know in 2011 when I was there. I think we're 12th out of 11 in the Big Ten. I don't know what we were, but Nevada has OSU ever finished outside of the top 10 or top 4 in the Big Ten? I'm sure they have, just not recently. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, it would take a series of unfortunate events for us to finish outside the top 4. I mean, it could happen, but here's my feeling: if we're outside of the top 4 and still not good enough to get an at-large bid, then we weren't worthy of being the national champion, and we don't belong to be there. So I believe in life. You get what you deserve. I felt that way throughout pretty much the BCS era. I mean, with some notable exceptions, but I think generally Ohio State has been dealt with pretty fairly. I think this year they got screwed by the committee on the Penn State being ranked over them thing, and that's my biggest concern on that is that every year. And I've been doing this for a long, long time. This predates me message boards. It's just me being a fan. But every year you hear the same siren song. You hear, oh, they're going to consider strength of schedule. Oh, if you lose a close game, you won't be punished for it. And then every year, go look at the rankings on the Power Five conference team, not some outlier team, but the Power Five conference teams, and everything is basically follows. It foots almost perfectly to the number of losses that you have, with very few exceptions. So for all this chatter about, oh, you get credit for wins, no, it's about how many losses you have. So I'm just concerned about these big out of conference games that we're scheduling, that it's going to come back and haunt us and hurt us in a significant manner. But yeah, I think once we expand to 4, that certainly takes some of that away. I think it'd be hard for Ohio State to be outside the top 4. But then, let me flip that around. As the Big Ten continues to expand and get tougher, this isn't your mother's, Big Ten anymore. You added USC and UCLA and Oregon and Washington, and those are all real deal teams. I mean, UCLA, I know they've fallen on hard times, but they've had times when they've been good. And Washington, we're going to find out this year that's not going to be an easy game, despite Washington not being great. Playing there on the road is a absolute viper pit, and Oregon beat us, and USC has come into the horseshoe and beat us. So, yeah, I think it's going to be more challenging than we've had in the past, but certainly, something that Ohio State should be up to.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that, like you said, this isn't Kirk's Big Ten that I played in, where we didn't have, and we actually did play at Washington in my senior year. But when you throw in Oregon and SC, man, if SC gets cranking at some point, which they will at some point, it's tough enough. You don't need to add Georgia and Bama and then have to go to Oregon, and I mean, it's enough. So, yeah, I'm totally with you on that. Like you can't really schedule teams anymore unless they do the super conference thing, and then everybody has to play everybody, and it's kind of like the NFL where the schedule just gets made. And I don't know, like I always think that the NFL is they're just so brilliant with how they do their scheduling, because the best teams always have the hardest schedule the next year. So it'd be interesting to see how they flip things around and if they mimic any of that, because that'd be really cool. Review Tube again, thanks for the 5. Appreciate you, man. It says rooting for Coach Day to get a massive winning record against the team up north as early as 2026. Says we'll likely play them 2 to 3 times each year. Yeah, it'll come. I mean, it's going to be a war up there this year, though. I mean, going up to Ann Arbor is never a picnic. So, but yeah, I mean, he's got the national championship gave him a very long leash, but winning against Michigan, it'll be a huge monkey off his back when he gets it done. Nevada, your thoughts on rooting for Ryan to get a winning record against Michigan, which, I mean, we could play him a couple times a year now.
Well, we could, but they'd have to do their part, which means they'd have to get into the postseason, and I just don't see them getting in the postseason. I don't think they're going to be a factor on the national front for quite some time, especially after the NCAA sanctions get handed down to them. So while I understand the sentiment and certainly it's setting up a scenario where you could play teams multiple times during the season, I don't think Michigan's going to be there. I think Michigan's going to be like, Purdue or Wisconsin or Iowa or something like that, where every few years maybe they'll rise up and make it in. But I don't think see them being a consistent foil for us going forward. I really don't.
Yeah, I agree with you. Joe, thanks for the deuce. How would have 24 seating played out in the new format? I mean, that's kind of tough. I mean, I don't have the final standings in front of me where it would be the 1, 2, and then what is it? The 3 plays the 6. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
I think Ohio State would have hosted either, I think Iowa maybe or Illinois, and Indiana would have posted the other one. I think that's the way that it would have broken down. Um, in that 1, 2, 3, 6, 4, 5 type of scenario. I think that's the way. But again, I don't have it in front of me either. But I'm pretty sure Ohio State would have been 4 and hosting a play-in playoff game before the Tennessee game.
Yeah. It looks like, and again, I don't know if this is correct, but and again, I'm just looking at this. It's got Oregon 1, Indiana 2, Penn State 3, Ohio State 4, Illinois 5, Iowa 6. So again, I don't know how this is. Obviously, it says that we're 14-2. Um, so this has us 4. We would have played Iowa or Illinois, hosted Illinois. Penn State would have hosted Iowa, and then Oregon and your beloved Indiana Hoosiers would have been the gotten the bye because they didn't play anybody. Genius, major genius.
And I don't know how that could be because Penn State finished second in the Big Ten this year. So I don't know what it would
No,
mean, but
you're probably right because I just put up I typed in Big Ten standings into Google and that's what popped up.
yeah.
So you're right. Penn State would be 2, and then Indiana would be 3, right?
Yeah, but you go right to the heart of the matter. I mean, the Indiana schedule was just so bad this year,
Yeah,
but because they didn't play anybody, they just waltzed on through there. So for people that are complaining about, well, they don't like this expanded play-in format, which I understand, I completely understand. I just keep asking people, well, how would you determine the top 4 teams in the Big Ten to serve the auto buys, because you can't just leave it to the whims of the schedule, because you end up with a fraudulent team like Indiana getting in there. And that'll happen a lot, especially in an 18-team conference or a
yeah,
20-team conference. Somebody's going to draw the lucky straw, and you're going to end up with a schedule that's just not challenging. And you should at least have to win one game at the end of the year to buy into your thing. That's just my viewpoint on it, but that's kind of where I'm at.
I totally agree with you. So yeah, all right. Good show, Nevada. We can wrap a little early tonight since we've got some stuff to do. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, no, just I think I mean, this new don't when the stuff schedule and the new playoff format comes out, just be confident in the fact that this is going to benefit Ohio State. I mean, it really is. Anything that gives us more opportunities to get in is a very good thing. There's going to be even more control line with the Big Ten, the SEC starting in 2026, and the one school they're going to protect above all else is going to be Ohio State, because Ohio State really is the ultimate big dog in the Big Ten, and we're
Yeah,
always going to get the benefit of the doubt, and that's certainly going to happen.
yeah. That's the best part of it all. All right, let's wrap this thing up. Again, apologize about the voice, guys, but I appreciate you guys joining us. If you guys enjoy our content, please leave us a like, click subscribe, also click that little alert bell. Again, I appreciate you guys being on here each and every night. We'll be back tomorrow night, 7:10 per usual, back to the normal nightly grind. But just appreciate you guys so much. Hope you guys are having a great Saturday night. Again, I hope you have some time with your family. There's a good UFC card on tonight. We'll have some bets. Dagestan Poppy has been on fire, so make sure you check out his Twitter, get his picks if you want to lay some bets down. So with that being said, thank you so much, Buckeye Nation, and thank you, Scoop family. Talk to you guys tomorrow. Hopefully I'll have some honey and some tea to get my throat feeling a little bit better. But I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. You guys have a great night. Go Bucks.